You know, I get it. El Cid doesn't seem like a powerful commander because at first blush, it doesn't look like he does lots of damage or has this massive area of effect. But let me tell you something, you're sleeping on El Cid. This commander is one of the very best first commanders available to you in Rise of Kingdoms and still has tremendous value in 2020. In this guide, we're going to provide to you everything you need to know about why this commander should be on your radar in 2020 and beyond. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be doing a full commander guide for El Cid because everybody is sleeping on this commander. We're going to review in this guide a detailed breakdown of why they are still super legit and powerful in 2020. From there, we're going to review the skills and talk a little bit about the things that are misunderstood here. We're going to talk about the optimal talent builds that you would use with this commander and how you can unlock them and the very best pairings that are available in the game. If you like Rise of Kingdoms guides that help you get value and smash your enemies, consider smashing that subscribe button for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos that help you get value, smash your enemies, and pick the right commanders. We're a sponsored content creator, and if you want to jump to any portion of this video, you can use the timestamps down below to get to exactly what it is that you want to see. So why is it that El Cid is really good in 2020? Let me first give you a very, very important indicator as to why El Cid is good, which is that there is a competition called Ark of Osiris League, and the very best teams in the two leagues that exist in Rise of Kingdoms play each other in something called the Ark of Osiris Invitational. In this event, players have access to literally any commander they want in the game expertise, okay? So we're talking about some of the best players in the game with access to literally every commander, level 60, all skilled out, everything. And they're bringing El Cid to fight in the open field. This should be a very strong indicator that El Cid is an important commander in Rise of Kingdoms. We need to unpack why that is the case. And there's a couple things that make El Cid a strong, standout commander in 2020, and yeah, in the early game and the late game. And the reason that El Cid is such a strong commander is as follows. First and foremost, although it looks like when you review the skills, which we're going to do very soon, some of them are not as impressive, it would seem. For instance, this first skill, it doesn't do massive amounts of damage, but it has some utility that is astonishingly good. People undervalue that. The other thing that they undervalue is that this commander has a lot of march speed. You want to get around the battlefield? Well, guess what? El Cid is your go-to, and when you're lower on health, you move 25% faster, which is completely insane. People historically undervalue the amount of damage that El Cid does because they don't see it all in the first skill as some big number. Instead, it's split across a couple skills, and the march speed is unbelievable. People underrate that. The last thing we need to talk about with relevance in 2020 is the fact that the shift of the game from being very cavalry focused to being very infantry focused takes place around Season 2 to Season 4 of KVK. And so when you get into the later game of Rise of Kingdoms, this commander gets more and more valuable because you're going to be seeing more and more infantry and archers counter infantry. In addition, his expertise is valuable against infantry. So his value over time will only go up, but he starts with a bang in Rise of Kingdoms as well. Why is that? Because in Season 1 of KVK, I'm going to make the argument that Esong with El Cid is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, rally combinations in the game. So do not be confused by the fact that, like, oh, there's not big damage on this first skill, and when he uses it, I don't see big damage numbers, because the real benefit you're getting here is that you have disarmed the enemy. We'll talk about that in a second. You won't see that show up as some big flashy number for damage that you dealt, but you have mitigated a massive amount of damage and effectiveness that you would have taken from the enemy, and that is super amazing. So now that we've talked about why they are such a good commander, we need to go and look at the skills to unpack exactly how they work, because unlike other commanders that have 3 skills that are relevant in most situations, El Cid has 4. And people just seem to forget about the fact that 4 relevant skills is really good, even if you think that on average, their skills are not as good, they've still got 4 of them, okay? So the first skill, damage factor of 1000 to the target, disables the normal attacks and active skills for 1 second. This is very powerful. If they can't do a normal attack, you've basically healed yourself for some amount of damage or healed an ally if they were attacking an ally. Why do I mention that as being important? Because if you were going to be doing a counter rally or swarming a rally, if you disarm the target, that is massive. You are making it so that your garrison, which is taking deaths, now is taking less deaths because they miss a round of taking a normal attack, and you delay their active skills by a turn. Potentially, if their active skills would have fired, they're delayed by a turn. That's all very valuable. So although you won't necessarily always get value from delaying their active skills, you will always get value from the normal attacks, and that is because if they weren't going to use an active skill in the next turn anyways, then this active skills can't be used for 1 second. It doesn't matter, right? This is also why historically I've liked pairing with other commanders that can chain these silence effects, so you get several of them in a row, so that you're much more likely to have not only an effect that is very impactful, but is very, very detrimental to the enemy's ability to actually harm you. So this is a very good commander, just from this first skill, for swarming down a rally and for being in the field and fighting against folks that are going to be trying to do lots of damage to you. You disable their normal attacks, very powerful. Also, disproportionately powerful against commanders that do extra normal attack damage, like, say, Attila and Takeda, or even just commanders that only care about normal and counterattack damage, like Charles Martel, Richard the First, right? They don't do skill damage. They just do normal attacks and counterattacks, so disabling those is very meaningful. Looking in at the next skill, you have a 10% chance to do a damage factor of 1000. That's freaking amazing. 1000 damage factor just for showing up. Now, people underestimate this, but here's why this is so good. When you fight in the open field, the enemy is not just going to stand there and let you wail on them. What is more likely to happen is that the enemy will be in combat with you for a few seconds and then run away, and no active skills get used at all, which means that abilities like this, that do, boom, instant 1000 damage factor. And yeah, there's a small chance, 1 in 10 chance. It's low, I get it. But abilities like this are extremely powerful because you can do astonishing amounts of damage in a shorter window than the enemy can deal the same amount of damage. You show up, boom, couple seconds, get a few big hits, and then they leave, but they took the worst end of the deal. So this is very, very powerful in open field combat, in Ancient Ruins, Altars of Darkness, and so on. Now, taking a look at the next skill, which is also quite exceptional, it gives you 20% defense for archers, which actually is some sustain that they really needed, and also 15% march speed. 15% march speed is a lot. By comparison, just very quickly to other commanders that are available in the early game of Rise of Kingdoms, we look at a commander like Minamoto, which people get right away, and here you're getting 20% attack and 10% march speed, right? So just, I know you can't compare exactly skill for skill because, you know, it's really about the balance of all the skills on the commander, but if we just get a look here, okay, this is 5% more march speed. We've also proven that in Ark of Osiris, defense is a better stat than attack. And I'll put a card up in the top if you want to see that detailed video. Health is the best stat, defense is the next best stat, and then attack is the stat you're interested in the least for a lot of situations in Rise of Kingdoms, just for overall efficiency. But card up in the top that I shared earlier if you want to go in depth on that. Now let's get a look at this fourth skill, because look folks, we have the potential for 4 skills to be active most of the time here, because on a commander like Charles Martel, he's got garrison skills. Well, that garrison skill is never going to be relevant in the open field. You may, for some amount of time, in the open field, in Canyon, and other game modes, get the benefit of El Cid, which does the following. When you are reduced to 50% fewer units, increase the damage of all troops by 25%, and the march speed of all troops by 25%. This effect lasts until the army is disbanded. This is amazing. 25% damage is massive. That's like 25 talent points worth of value, just for perspective, right? Like, that is really good. And normally to get that kind of effect, you have to have like a downside too, right? Like, if you look in the leadership tree, you have to have 3 different unit types and put in 3 points for 3% of extra damage dealt. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is really good. 25% damage is massive, and the 25% march speed is really good too. If you're in a rally situation, this gets really out of hand. And why is that? When you're the rally leader, your march will drop below 50% strength, but people will keep reinforcing the rally to keep it full. Well, once your march alone gets below 50% strength, if you're the rally leader, you get this benefit for the whole rally. This is why El Cid is a great rally leader. I've even seen people put him on their garrison when it gets below 50%. And I think that's a sketchy, it's a debatable choice. That's a truly debatable choice. But I'm just going to point out that although this is an archer commander, there's only one skill that cares about archers. And on average, most commanders only have 3 skills relevant in most situations. So you're still getting a pretty good rate on El Cid, even if you don't have full archers to that party, or you're not taking advantage of this skill at all. The expertise skill on El Cid, Out of Control, increases archer attack and defense by 5%, which is pretty solid, and increases archer damage to infantry by 2%. I mean, it's small, but it's a benefit. 10% of stats and 2% extra damage to infantry is honestly one of the least impressive expertise skills in the game. And I think the reason that this is so unimpressive is that the rest of his skills are actually super legit, and they didn't want to make this commander stacked toward having to be expertised. He's actually stacked toward the first couple skills, which is a benefit for people that won't get the expertise skill, because the first 2 are amazing, and the 4th is also quite good. Let's go talk about the talents for this commander. Quite frankly, one of these trees is a little bit of a bummer. That is the versatility tree. The archer tree is great, the skill tree makes a ton of sense, but versatility is a total bummer because there's really no good talents in here for El Cid. We can talk very briefly about why you might put points into this tree, but there are really not many, and then we'll show you the main builds. The problem with the versatility tree is it's really not good at anything. It's not particularly good for anything, and the early points that you gain access to are not relevant for any of the things that you're using this commander for combat. You're not using them for hitting a city. Like, that's not really what they're there for. You're not using them for gathering. You're not using them to be the garrison captain, increase your watchtower attack. Like, what? Serving as a garrison commander? This makes... Oh my gosh, this just makes no sense. So the versatility tree is not compelling. For that reason, I have not even leveled El Cid up to level 60. I have not even leveled El Cid up to level 60. Save your stars, because there's other commanders that are certainly higher priority. There are other commanders that are higher priority because they simply have more talent trees available. So in order to show you the great builds that we would recommend for El Cid, if he is the primary, which for most people he probably shouldn't be, we're going to use our Esong, who is level 60 and has the same trees, except he also has the garrison tree. We just won't put any points into that tree, and it's basically the same as El Cid. I will say that the only advantage of having a commander like El Cid as the primary and some other commander that is high damage as the secondary is that there are talents in the skill tree that make it so that you increase the damage of the secondary commander. So after the active or primary commander uses a skill, the active skill damage of the secondary commander is increased. So there is a micro optimization here if your El Cid is the primary and your Esong is the secondary, where you could squeeze out some extra damage. All right, we're now looking at our Esong, but we're just going to use the exact same trees that would be available on El Cid, skill tree and the archer tree. And this build that you're looking at now is one that I would recommend for open field combat or in a game mode like Canyon. This is a build I am actively using right now in Canyon. I go all the way up to the top of the archer tree. I am bringing all archers, and it is noteworthy that several skills here do require all archers in order to be valuable. I then get Razor Sharp and also Rejuvenate for generating lots of rage. Razor Sharp is deceptively good. It grants an additional 9 rage after launching a normal attack. Basically, every normal attack you do gives you 9 rage, which is very good. I also have gone in and picked up some extra march speed. This is something I use in the open field. If you're using this build exclusively for Canyon, you drop the march speed because you don't need that, because you're not really marching anywhere. But this is the build I use for open field and Canyon, and I like it a lot. I have gone in and put 1 point into Naked Rage. This is a little bit debatable. I'm making the gamble here that I'm going to deal more skill damage out than I'm going to take in, which is true if you are fighting marches like Charles Martel or Richard I that are not doing skill damage at all. But sometimes you just get value because you're doing more skill damage on the whole, even if you're also taking skill damage back. If you were investing in a specific order as you're leveling up this commander, I would start by going all the way over to Rejuvenate. This is just too good. The Rage Gen is too good to miss out on. In a similar vein, I would make my way over to Razor Sharp to get that Rage Gen. It's crucial. This is a commander that, look, El Cid's active skill, you want to fire off a lot because you're disabling the enemy's normal attacks and delaying their active skills. The faster you can do that, the better. Now, if we look into where you put your points after that, if you are fighting in the open field, I would recommend you get these march speed points on the right-hand side of the tree and go to get Venomous Sting, then fill out the rest of the archer tree, then make your way to the march speed in the bottom right. The next build I want to show you is purely dedicated to being in the field and using the skill tree and maximizing the amount of time that you use that active skill on El Cid. This is the build I would recommend. We use the full skill tree for Feral Nature. This has a 10% chance to grant 100 Rage, which, by the way, Razor Sharp is almost as good as that. On average, this is about 90 Rage every 10 seconds, and this is about 100 Rage every 10 seconds. But you gotta commit a lot more talent points to get Feral Nature, by the way. But if we're going all in on the Rage Gem plan, that's what I would recommend. This is an open field build because I've taken the right-hand side of the archer tree in order to get all of the march speed that is available on that portion of the tree. And we do make our way over with our remaining points to get full quiver. There is 1 point remaining, which you can either put over here in rapid fire, you can put it in a naked rage, or you can put it in a latent power. I don't really have a particular preference for any of those at this time. If you were going for this build, my recommendation would be that you go to Feral Nature first, then make your way to Razor Sharp, then make your way to Venomous Sting, then make your way to full quiver. The final build I want to show you for this commander, and there are fewer builds because, look, he's only got 2 trees to work with. That's a lot less combos, is going to be a rally lead build. Now, this is a rally lead build because we've basically done the same thing we have right now, but reduced the amount of march speed that we have, and we have avoided getting Naked Rage because you really don't want that in a rally situation in most cases, because rallies get swarmed down and taking extra skill damage can really suck for a rally that's getting swarmed. There are some cases where that would not be the case. For example, if you are battling against a garrison with Constantine and Charles Martel, well, yeah, they're not doing skill damage. So you might say, I don't care if my rally gets swarmed, I want the 6% extra skill damage to that garrison, and that would be a super legit choice. So this is the rally lead build if you think that you are going to get swarmed down, or you don't know if the garrison you're fighting against is going to have skill damage. I think most will, especially in the early game in Rise of Kingdoms, when you're considering using an El Cid as the rally leader. My expectation is that as a rally leader, your commanders are much higher level anyways, if not maxed out. The only exception might be in the early game, and if that's the case, I would recommend that you get Rejuvenate first, then go and get Phoenix Tail Arrows and Razor Sharp. From there, Whistling Arrows, and then fill out the rest of the tree. You'll notice we put 2 points into health. That is because health is the best stat in Rise of Kingdoms. You could go up and get Latent Power. However, I feel like you're getting more value from the health than slightly increasing the damage of the second skill that you have on El Cid, which does additional skill damage. Personal preference, that's really not based in data. That's an opinion. If someone's got a different set of data to prove one way or the other, I'd actually be pretty eager to see that. Let's talk about how you unlock El Cid, because this commander is available in a lot of places. You can get them from gold keys. You can get them from the expedition. You can get them with universal sculptures that you can upgrade the skills more. And you can get them from a Mightiest Governor event, which is kind of nuts. So there's a lot of ways to gain access to El Cid. In general, however, I want to remind you that commanders that are available in gold keys are commanders that I would not recommend you use these universal sculptures on, because you will get to a situation where, yeah, you're still opening gold keys, you're getting El Cid sculptures, and they are 100% worthless to you. Now, I did make a video recently talking about how there is the possibility they will add a shop into the game where you can convert extra items into a currency that might get you some other good stuff. I personally am saving every single sculpture of El Cid and whatever else I have that's extra above and beyond the expertise in case they become relevant in such a shop. I would recommend really everybody does that, even though you could trade in your legendaries in the rebuilding of your Crusader fort for stage 3, right up in the top if you want to see what that looks like. I strongly advise, again, that you do not use your universals on El Cid until he's either very close to expertise, or you've run out of other good commanders that you really want to work on, or you're the rally leader and you really need to have this commander for a war. Those are the situations where I think you should use universals to go and get the expertise or to skill up this commander. Now, on the topic of skilling them up, you always want to max the first skill on a commander, and this one is no exception. You also then want to max the second skill, because this 1000 damage factor is underrated, underappreciated, undervalued. It's very good. It's very, very good. From there, you've got some choices. If you're leveling up El Cid to be a primary, okay, sure. You can start leveling him up, starring him up, unlock the next 2 skills. With that said, in my perfect world, you would max this skill, this third skill, before you unlock the 4th skill, if you're going to use this commander in the open field. Why is that? This is good for you all the time. 20% defense, 15% march speed. This becomes good only after you're below 50%. So you really don't want points in this if you're going to avoid situations where you're below 50%, which you should in the open field. Just because you get this benefit in the open field does not mean you should run your march into the ground. The only situations where this is a better skill to invest in than the third skill is if you are going to be using this commander primarily in Canyon and primarily in Ark of Osiris. Then I would say, okay, you know what? Level them up. This is the better skill to have maxed out. Go for that one. Try to have, get lucky and have the skills land on the 4th skill instead of the 3rd skill, and that seems like a fine choice. In general, and I'll say this again because this is important, El Cid is not a commander I think you really need to level up to be a primary commander. Most players should not do that, and I haven't done that as well. I would argue you would need to be a pretty big spender to prioritize leveling up this commander rather than some other commander that has 3 relevant talent trees. Let's get a look now at the pairings for El Cid, and there are so many. We're going to start with the legendary Archer commanders to kick this off. The first obvious pair is Esong. They're phenomenal together. You use them for rallying in Season 1 of KVK. They are exceptional. Optimally, your El Cid is the primary, and your Esong is the secondary, for the reasons explained earlier, with talent points making the secondary commander do extra damage, your Esong is doing more damage. The next Archer commander we can get a look at is Tamaris. I don't love Tamaris as a choice here. I feel like Tamaris is really all in on pairing with Edward or pairing with Artemisia. So for that reason, probably don't pair with Tamaris. On the topic of pairing with Edward, I think they are pretty reasonable when paired together. However, I am going to say that, I don't love the fact that Edward of Woodstock really wanted you to have a rage engine, and El Cid doesn't bring that. I think that you can do better than the Edward of Woodstock and El Cid pairing. Now, I should mention, by the way, with Edward of Woodstock and El Cid, that this is a pair that a lot of people are using right now in Canyon for their offlane, which I find fairly surprising, but it is remarkably effective. Let me show you just how many people are using this right now. We see the first choice, not using it. Second choice, seems that everybody's moved over to the Edward Artemisia plan. Next up, boom, there is Edward El Cid. Number 3 in our kingdom is Edward El Cid. Next up, Ramses El Cid. Next up, what do we have? No El Cid over here. No El Cid over here. Boom, Edward El Cid. Next up, no El Cid. Next up, no El Cid. Next up, no El Cid. So it seems that the meta actually is shifting away from the El Cid being with the Edward. But I just wanted to call out that there's a bunch of teams that use that. And if you're in season 2 or 3 of KVK through season 4, then the Edward with El Cid pair is going to be super legit for the offlane. That seems to be working really well for a lot of teams, but will lose favor as you make your way to season 5. Now, Ramses and El Cid, on the other hand, now this is a pair that I'm very excited about. I like the El Cid primary in this case because you can generate lots of rage. You can use that to power out Ramsey's skills, and Ramsey's skills are in and of themselves very, very good. But so, by the way, really broken good in reducing the healing of the target. The faster you can fire this off, the more you can reduce their healing and the chances that when they heal, they will get no benefit whatsoever. For that reason, El Cid primary, Ramsey secondary is really good for single target damage, and I think that is very, very exceptional. On the Artemisia front, I think they're an okay pairing, but not stupendous. Artemisia is doing AoE damage. The defense that you have from El Cid is going to be good for reducing the amount of damage that you deal to yourself, which is kind of weird. I like them as a pair. I'm not sure who I would prefer to have as the primary for open field combat. Probably the El Cid to generate more rage. Probably the El Cid. But it's kind of a toss-up. The defense on the Artemisia is really quite remarkable. This tree is very good and often underrated. With that said, the extra march speed that you get from El Cid is something that Artemisia really needed to be effective on the battlefield, and when you get low, you now have kind of a getaway car with that 25% extra march speed. You can really try to get out of combat quickly, and for that reason, I think they are a compelling pair. Let's get a look now at the legendary pairs that are not archer commanders, and this is a weird one. This is a really weird one because if you're going to run your march into the ground, which is true in Canyon, then you can pair your El Cid with just about anybody because the first, second, and fourth skills are all relevant with any troop type. So I'll just call out a few standout commanders here that I think are really exceptional. As I cruise through this list, I think that Freddy with El Cid is a really interesting choice. They both kind of wanted a rage engine. Neither of them has it. However, the march speed is something Freddy needed desperately. The march speed on Julius Caesar was needed desperately. In this case, I'd say Julius Caesar maybe needs to be the primary so that the active skills of your El Cid get the benefit, but really I could go kind of either way on that one. I'd say probably Julius Caesar is a better direction though. Looking in at a few other commanders, Mehmed is a really solid pairing. They work together incredibly well. Very few people use this combo in the open field, but it is super legit. And I think that's mostly because most people don't have both of these commanders in a great place and to then even be using them together in the field. Or by the time they do, they've got a lot of other really great choices. But these two pair together exceptionally well. Some more unconventional pairings at the legendary tier might include Ethelfled primary with El Cid secondary for Canyon. This is an interesting frontline march. You could bring mostly archers. You'll still get the benefit of the defense. You probably want a mixed army with Ethelfled, which is fine. But then you start doing 25% extra damage, which is really quite exceptional. In fact, the more that I talk myself into it, I probably would put this march in the back row, the Ethelfled with El Cid. And if you're in the early game and you've got like a 5-5-1-1 El Cid, that's something you could do and you'd get a lot of single target damage. I think there might be better choices. I said it was unconventional, right? But that is a thing you could do. You also could bring full infantry, Alexander the Great primary, El Cid secondary. And what I think is interesting about that is that you've got two abilities that can proc to do huge damage factor almost instantly. And that is really crazy good when you're on the open field battling against marches, and those marches are not going to just stand there until all your active skills fire off. Like, you could theoretically, in one round, do 2,700 total damage factor because El Cid triggers and Alexander the Great triggers. And look, if you are battling with that march and it gets low, you get below 50%, like, yeah, the 25% extra march speed is kind of amazing for getting out of that situation from the El Cid. I think there's some deceptively interesting pairings here. There might be some that I'm forgetting, but for the most part, you know, a 5-5-1-1 El Cid is probably going to be better than most epic single target damage alternatives, and you should use the El Cid over like Ulji Mundok in that case. So a lot of options at the legendary tier. My guidance here will be, what is the context in which you are trying to pair them? If it is open field and you're getting below 50%, you get the advantage of the march speed to get away. If it's in Canyon or Ark of Osiris where you run your march into the ground, you get the 25% extra damage. That's pretty sweet too. Now, looking in at the epic archer pairings, there's one really obvious standout pair, and this might just be straight up the best pair, which is Herman and El Cid. I've talked about this in a number of videos, but if you use Herman primary, El Cid secondary, you can get a 3-second silence chain, which is kind of amazing. Here is exactly how that works. Herman uses his active skill. On the next turn, that silence effect from Herman, it's a 2-second silence, applies. On the next turn, El Cid uses his active skill, and the second turn of the silence has applied. On the next turn, El Cid's silence is now applied, and that is 3 seconds of silence on the target. Very exceptional. That is how you can prevent the target from doing anything that they're trying to do for 3 turns. That's a big deal. If you bring a bunch of Herman El Cids with a bunch of people, like, you can swarm down a T5 player, and they're just sitting there with normal attacks and counterattacks. They're not using their active skills, which is kind of nuts. This will be my number 1 pick. A lot of march speed here, rage reduction to the enemy, generates rage as well. I mean, this is everything you wanted with these pairs of commanders. Slam dunk, great choice. Now, Kusunoki is also really interesting. Kusunoki brings AoE damage. He's got the same trees, archer skill, and he's also got garrison, which is nice, but for most cases, that's not really relevant for how you're going to pair with El Cid. I suppose El Cid should be the primary to power up the AoE damage here, but that's debatable. I will say that your priority should be picking up this talent over here, Latent Power, to enhance your additional skill damage if you are pairing with Kusunoki, because Kusunoki does additional damage factor over here. He does additional damage factor over here, and also the second skill of El Cid does additional damage factor. And by the way, this additional damage factor, just like El Cid's, has a chance to fire off when you just tap the target, right? All it takes is 1 normal attack to trigger this, which is really quite good. In fact, looking on this more closely, you get 450 damage factor for 2 seconds. I mean, this is 900 damage factor. It is almost as much damage factor as El Cid. There is one other archer pair we do need to talk about. That is Kira. Most players don't have her yet at an expertise level, but if you did have her expertise, I like that she does AoE damage for a game mode like Canyon. I like that she is going to increase your attack and defense, and I like that she is going to increase the skill damage that you deal. I'll say that you don't deal that much skill damage, although I will point out that this skill increases skill damage, not active skill damage. So theoretically, this is actually pretty good for both the first and second skill of El Cid, getting a nice damage boost. I mean, this pair is better than meets the eye. And the last one here makes it so that the expertise skill does some additional damage factor, which is quite nice. In this case, I would go and get those talents in the skill tree, Latent Power, that increase your additional damage factor. That seems like a very solid pickup. Getting a look now at all other epic commanders that you might pair with, we will blaze through this. I think that Sun Tzu is an amazing pairing. Optimally, you'd use your El Cid primary for the skill tree with the archer tree, and you get more stats specifically for archers that way. I really like that pair a lot for generating ridiculous amounts of rage from Sun Tzu. I like the CPO Africanus pairing. It's deceptively good because this gives the sustain that the El Cid needed. I think that in this case, it's more of like a Canyon thing with CPO primary and El Cid secondary, and you can sort of tank a little bit by disarming the enemy and reducing the damage that you're taking. I think this is okay. I think I'll call attention to the fact that once you get low, not only are you doing 25% extra damage from the El Cid, but you also get very tanky and get extra healing, which is quite solid. I like the Joan of Arc pairing. I think Joan of Arc should be the primary in order to rapid fire out those skills from the support tree. That way you get more disarms going. I do not like the Olgi Mundok pairing. I do like the Boudica pairing for the rage gen against single targets. She also has sustain, which is great. El Cid brings the march speed, which is really exceptional. I think these two work together very well, and arguably the El Cid should be the primary because the integration tree is just not very impressive. I do not like Pelagius when paired with El Cid, although I suppose if you had a 5-5-1-1, that would be totally fine for your El Cid. I don't particularly like Bybars, but same guidance about 5-5-1-1 El Cid. You actually could go with a lot of different commanders. I do like the Osmond pairing, although they really kind of wanted a rage engine. you don't get that, but if you're doing single target takedowns, Osman is really quite exceptional for hitting a single target. All in all, I think that El Cid is a solid and really undervalued and underrated commander. In fact, I would predict before I've even launched this video that it's going to be watched much less than a lot of my other commander guides, but that is somewhat shocking to me because this commander is really good. And it's not super sexy with like the huge amounts of damage over here. That's not a thing that he's got. But he's really quite powerful as a commander, and I would argue in 2020, still very good and highly underrated. If you're looking for other commander guides and refreshes for 2020, I'll have a card up in the top for a playlist covering every single commander that we have re-reviewed in 2020 for their relevance. I would highly recommend that you check out whatever commander you're most interested in before you go and invest in them. We also have a more broad commander playlist. I'll put a card up in the top for that as well. If you're looking for general guidance or tier lists to figure out how all these commanders actually rank up against each other, that playlist has your back. If you enjoyed this video, consider throwing a like onto the video as a way of supporting the channel or subscribing for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos. And look, we cover new commanders when they come out, and there should be some new commanders cooking up sometime soon. I'm looking forward to that, and until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.